Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine being on a cross-country flight, expecting, a pretty mundane journey, and instead you find yourself working with a total stranger, collaborating to turn this dry financial presentation into something, well, compelling, human-centered, a story that ends up creating thousands of jobs. That's pretty much exactly where our source material for this deep dive began. Our source today is Universal Principles of Storytelling for Designers, 100 Key Concepts for Bringing Good Ideas to Life by Lyle Sandler. And it's really this powerful compilation of principles, draws from classical theater, literature, anthropology, psychology, philosophy, film,
Oh, yeah.
all sorts.
Yeah, and what's so compelling, I think, is that author's aha moment up at 35,000 feet, suddenly realizing that storytelling, it could make a real-world difference way beyond just fiction. And that's really the essence of what we're exploring today, isn't it? It's about taking that power of narrative and, well, distilling it, making design not just functional, but resonant, impactful.
Absolutely. So our mission here in this deep dive is to pull out the most important nuggets from these 100 principles. Give you a kind of shortcut, really, to understanding how you can infuse depth, resonance, that transformative potential into any story or design you're working on. We'll look at principles across a few areas: literary devices, structure, emotion, psychology and philosophy, and methods or tools. Okay, so every great story, and you could argue every great design too, it starts with a strong foundation. How do you actually lay that groundwork, in a way that immediately grabs your audience?
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? And the opportunity, too.
Yeah.
Introducing that critical background info,
Yeah.
but without just overwhelming people. That's where exposition comes in. It's key. Think about the iconic opening crawl in Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It doesn't just list facts. It primes you, hints at conflict, epic struggles,
Yes.
gets you ready for what's coming.
Yeah.
And even before that, sometimes you have an epigraph, like a powerful quote right at the start. It can immediately set the tone, the intent. It's almost like a whispered secret or maybe a big declaration that guides how you see things from the get-go.
That's a really powerful way to put it. It's less like a data dump and more about making that emotional connection, and a cognitive one too. Gently leading your audience into the story's core.
Yeah.
Just enough context to hook them, basically, not drown them. So, okay, beyond just the words and that initial context, it's about setting the whole stage, right? Mise en scène. That's not just for theater. It's about intentionally arranging everything: physical props, the environment itself, communicating things words alone just can't. Like if you're designing a kitchen, every little detail tells a story. The lighting, the countertops. Or if you're designing for a city, like the source points out, every city is a story. It's agoras, those old public spaces, it's parks, universities.
And that deep intentionality in design, it connects right into master planning. It shows how every single element, whether it's on a stage or in a city layout, it contributes to this bigger unfolding narrative. Master planning is basically, well, large-scale mise-en-scène for a living world. It's a big long-term blueprint for a whole system. And then building on that, you have world building. That considers everything surrounding your design, the full context, resources, economics, even the language and rituals of the people in that world. Because nothing exists in a vacuum, right? Defining that world adds just immense meaning and value.
Right. So stage is set, world is built. No, the language, the words we use to navigate that world, they matter hugely. The source talks about lexicon. It's like a curated list of words to describe a design, making sure it's not just precise, but actually relatable to your specific audience. Think about a long sandwich. Is it a sub, a hoagie, a hero, a grinder? Choosing that right lexicon, it helps everyone get on the same page. Shared understanding.
Exactly. And it's not just what words you choose. It's also about how the design itself and its story speaks to us, even non-verbally.
Yeah.
Which brings us to tone and tenor. Tone is sort of the emotional landscape, like a song's melody. It shapes the atmosphere, the feeling you want to create. Tenor, though, that's the deeper meaning, the steady drum beat underneath, the substance, the intention. And designers really have to harmonize those two. The attitude, the mood you convey, it's got to align perfectly with the deeper meaning and purpose of your design.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, defined the world. But a story or a design, it only really clicks when it connects with people, right? On a human level, which means we need to dive into the human element: emotion, relatability.
Yeah, and a really key insight here is how emotions, they aren't just feelings, they're actually information, valuable information. Affect as information theory. It shows how crucial emotional impact is when we make decisions, often overrides the purely rational facts. The source talks about patients, undergoing the same procedure, or guests at a fancy hotel. They made choices based not just on logic, but on how they feel about the experience.
Yeah.
So emotions are pivotal. They help us judge if a design fits with our own preferences, our values.
So it's less about trying to avoid emotion and more about understanding it's actually a critical data point for user behavior. Designers have to see emotion as this powerful source of information, especially because, let's face it, humans often can't weigh up all the objective factors. That example of the nervous flyer choosing a bus, even though the plane is statistically safer, that nails it. How emotions can just override the data sometimes. Decisions driven by feeling first, facts second.
Which leads us straight into empathy. The source shares this really powerful story from anthropologist Margaret Mead about a 115,000-year-old healed femur bone, considered the first sign of civilization.
Why? Because someone cared, right?
Exactly. Someone cared for another person who was vulnerable, injured. That's empathy. The source calls it a fundamental human technology. It lets us truly understand others.
Okay, so building on that empathy, how do you make characters in a story, or even the user in your design concept, genuinely relatable? That's character relatability. The source suggests things like revealing flaws, aspirations, maybe unexpected details. Their origin story, it's about building that connection through shared humanity, right? Making your audience feel invested in their journey or in your design's purpose. And when we talk users, we often land on personas, these fictional representations of real users. But importantly, built from observation, data, not just imagination, helps designers keep it real, keep that empathy front and center.
And then you have archetypes. These are deeper, universal patterns, recognizable across all cultures. Think Harley-Davidson. They're the rebel. Lego is the creator.
Ah, right.
These deep-seated traits, they instantly clarify a brand's personality, makes the abstract idea of a user or a brand feel precise, recognizable.
And these connections, they go beyond just human traits sometimes, tapping into how we perceive things. That's where anthropomorphism comes in, yeah, giving human characteristics to things that aren't human, like that Chicago hotel robot, the one with eyes and a mouth, or the ATM that said, "Oh, I'm not feeling well." The source says it turned a simple transaction into, well, more like a relationship. Builds connection, confidence, even with non-sentient things. It's fascinating.
And fundamental to all this connection, our senses, how we perceive the world.
Yeah.
The source really highlights how designers can weave narrative through describing how a design impacts sight, taste, touch, smell, sound, all of it. That satisfying thump of a luxury car door.
Oh, yeah, you know that sound.
Or the smell of fresh bread from an oven. These things are sticky. They stick with you because they engage the senses so deeply. Think about paint colors named hot lips, or the way a user manual might describe something. It draws you in.
And then for the really subtle stuff, there's infrathin, a feeling so small it's barely perceptible, but it still has an impact, like the whoosh of a revolving door or the warmth left on a seat.
Those tiny moments.
Yeah, these hard-to-define, almost indescribable moments. They contribute to the essence of a design story. Can't quite pin it down, but you feel it. Okay, moving on. Every compelling story, every design that solves a real problem. It needs something pushing it forward. A challenge, right? A tension that needs resolving.
Yeah, and zooming out a bit, the source brings up the trigger or wicked problem. These are the big ones. Formidable, interconnected challenges, really difficult to define, let alone solve. Things like poverty, climate change, identifying this why behind the what's. That's the fundamental reason for design, for storytelling. And unlike your standard problems, wicked problems, they don't have one clear formulation. No simple fix, which makes the story around tackling them even more crucial.
And where you find a wicked problem, you usually find conflict. It's that friction. Opposing forces. Could be internal struggles or external clashes. Society, nature, technology even. It's what keeps us hooked, right? Offers insight into strengths, vulnerabilities. And it's a powerful catalyst for change, for transformation.
The plot then becomes the C's, the sequence of events, carefully laid out. Keeps the story moving. It's not just a summary, though. The source mentions 3 C's, conflict, characters, and causation, where one event logically triggers the next. Plot is like the connective tissue, makes the story make sense, makes it compelling.
Okay, ready for a cool storytelling technique? In medias res. Means starting your story in the middle of things.
Ah, yeah. Dropping you right in.
Exactly, like those police dramas that hook you immediately with action, then they loop back later for the backstory, the exposition. Creates mystery, anticipation, plunges you right into the heart of it.
And related to that, how do you hint at what's coming without giving the whole game away? That's foreshadowing, or sometimes called planting and payoff. Think Citizen Kane, that word rosebud, right at the beginning. But you only find out what it means right at the very end. It's a fundamental technique. Subtly hinting at what's down the road. Builds suspense, that sense of inevitability almost.
And for real impact, maybe a surprise. There's deceptive cadence. It's like a sudden shift in music.
Right.
Or a twist in a horror movie, something unexpected that just snaps your attention back. The source gives that example of a bank design presentation, revealing huge unforeseen cost savings right at the very end.
Yeah, that changes everything.
Totally. It transforms how the audience sees the whole project. A genuine plot twist, but for a presentation.
Something that always fascinates me is the paradox of suspense. Why do we rewatch films like Jaws dozens of times
Yeah.
and still feel that suspense, even though we know exactly what happens?
Right. It makes no logical sense, but it happens.
It's that complex mix. Fear, hope, uncertainty. Real or imagined. The source digs into theories like entertained uncertainty or desire frustration, basically suggesting the experience of the journey matters, even if you know the destination.
Okay, so the takeaway there for designers isn't just, oh, people rewatch Jaws. It's realizing that even when your audience knows the outcome, maybe they know what your design does, the journey itself. The carefully crafted anticipation, the emotional beats, that can still be incredibly engaging. How can you, even with a known solution, build in some entertained uncertainty or some compelling emotional moments into your user experience? That's the question, maybe. All right, let's shift gears a bit. Let's explore the blueprints, the frameworks that make stories really resonate, make them stick.
Well, storytelling has multiple functions.
Yeah.
Right? To entertain, sure, but also to teach, promote traditions, influence people. But how you tell it, that's just as important as what you tell. The principle of show, don't tell, famously linked to Anton Chekhov.
Right, show the glint of light on broken glass.
Exactly. Don't just say the moon is shining. Share vivid sensory details, not just dull facts. It pulls your audience in, lets them experience it, not just hear about it.
Totally. Instead of just saying your sports car has soft leather seats,
Yeah.
show me by saying it feels like slipping into a tailor-made leather glove.
Yeah.
That puts you right there in the experience.
And these literary devices, they're like a designer's toolkit for getting ideas across clearly, with impact. An analogy is your direct comparison. Builds understanding using something familiar, like swimming flippers inspired by bird feet, but a metaphor that goes deeper. It's seeing one thing as another. Less is more isn't just comparing things. It is the essence of design simplicity, right?
Yep.
And then synecdoche. That's incredibly efficient. You highlight a crucial part, say, one specific button in an interface to represent the whole system or concept.
Another powerful idea is the fourth wall. That imaginary barrier between the storyteller and the audience, breaking it. Like pausing mid-presentation to directly address a skeptical client, or maybe even a user in testing,
Wow.
that can really recapture attention, build trust.
Yeah, it's risky though, isn't it?
It can be, it can disrupt the flow, but when you do it right, purposefully, it can actually enhance things, creates this direct personal connection.
Okay, thinking about structure, from Aristotle way back when to modern marketing. Simple frameworks like the 3-act structure work. Setup, confrontation, resolution gives you a clear progression. And Freytag's pyramid expands on that. Guides characters through exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, denouement, aiming for that cathartic release for the audience. These structures are like reliable roadmaps for building tension and delivering a satisfying resolution.
Yeah, the source had that great client conversion rate example for the 3-act structure. Act 1, client recognizes their role is shrinking. Act 2, the team hits resistance. Act 3, patience pays off, they exceed expectations, even acquire a competitor. It just creates these clear, impactful story beats. They resonate.
And then you have the really archetypal stuff, like the hero's journey. It's a pattern you find everywhere, across cultures, across time, ancient myths, sure, but also just a trip to the market can follow that pattern.
Really?
Yeah. It's so relatable because we all face calls to action, right? We meet mentors, face trials, undergo transformations, move from our ordinary world to a special one, and hopefully back again.
Yeah.
And Kurt Vonnegut's shapes of stories, they're so simple but brilliant.
Yes.
A visual way to grasp narrative arcs, like man in a hole, good fortune, then a fall, then rescued. It's a powerful tool for plotting out a design's journey or even your persona's life story.
Not all stories need that big conflict, right? The Japanese Kishinketsu structure, that introduces a twist, but not necessarily a confrontation.
Exactly. It follows key, introduction, show development, 10, the twist, and ketsu, conclusion. Really useful if you're, say, presenting a design team, then a unique challenge they faced, and finally a surprising non-confrontational outcome. Something really critical to think about is contrast beginning to end. You need that distinct otherness between the start and the finish. It's crucial for showing transformation, whether it's a stressed vacationer coming back relaxed or a drought-stricken village finally getting fresh water. That change is the impact.
Mm-hmm. And for impact, you also mentioned the rule of three. Things grouped in threes are just stickier, more memorable.
Always. Milk, bread, eggs, Luke, Leia, Han Solo.
Right.
It's the smallest number you need to create a pattern. And that third item often gives a sense of completion, satisfaction.
Which sort of leads us to think about the MacGuffin. What's driving your story or maybe your design project, but isn't actually the main point.
That's the MacGuffin, Hitchcock's.
Yeah, like the microfilm in North by Northwest.
Exactly. It's the trigger for the plot, gets everything moving. But the thing itself is kind of irrelevant conceptually. It's about building momentum, getting things going, without getting bogged down in maybe unnecessary details, focusing on the intangibles that push the work forward.
Thinking bigger picture now. Design is performance, dramaturgy. That's like design thinking, but for theater, making sure the story lands with the audience, feels relevant.
Yeah, and that connects nicely to choreography, which in UX design isn't about literal dancing, obviously. It's about the flow, the seamless movement and sequencing of interactions, like a dance from click to pause. Think about the London Underground map, how intuitive that flow feels. It's about deliberately orchestrating every step, every event.
And for really bringing designs to life, making them believable, you can even look at Disney's 12 basic principles of animation. Things like squash and stretch or anticipation. They're not just for cartoons.
Not at all. They affect everything. UI transitions, PowerPoint slides. They breathe life and dynamic movement into things that might otherwise feel static.
Okay, last big section. How do we make sure our stories don't just inform? How do they actually inspire action, create real transformation?
Well, stories don't just prompt transformation. They provoke calls to action. And those are vital. Could be a direct buy now, sure, but it could also be more subtle, an invitation to a lifestyle change. Think Heineken encouraging bonding or Apple telling us to think differently, compelling calls to action. They need clarity. They build trust. Guide the audience where you want them to go.
And the source had that really vivid example, the Whispered Breeze story, that somehow escalated into a clown slayer tornado.
Yeah, that one. In a narrative exercise.
Right, but the point was it made graduate design students genuinely reconsider real-world stuff. Home security, leaving kids alone, that's true transformation. Because it sparked real reflection, maybe even changed behavior, just by pushing the boundaries with a hypothetical scenario.
And for any story to land, to feel true, it needs verisimilitude. It has to seem real, believable on some level. Even if it's extraordinary, it needs roots in, well, factual foundations or at least relatable human characters. That's what allows for the willing suspension of disbelief.
Where we choose to believe in Superman, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We set aside our critical judgment because the underlying human stuff, the motivations, the struggles, they feel relatable, genuine.
So how do we make our stories contagious, unforgettable? The source mentions the sexy S model for stickiness.
Yeah. Simplicity, unexpectedness, concreteness, credibility, emotion, story.
Right. If your story nails those elements, it'll stick, it becomes memorable, easy to repeat, spreads its message.
And a key insight related to this is about creativity. It's not just for artists. There's that study by Dr. George Land, showed creativity often drops off as we get older, suggesting that non-creative behavior is learned. So storytelling can actually be a catalyst, a way to free up the imagination again. And as humans, we're always in perceiving mode, constantly making deductions. Is this true? Is this helpful? It's like Sherlock Holmes, right? Processing clues, looking for missing info, trying to draw conclusions.
Tangible tools can really help storytelling too. Like prototyping, it's not just about making models, it's about creating compelling props, things you can use for real-time demos. Remember that full-size foam core bank branch prototype in the source?
And let them walk through it.
Exactly. Let the executives feel the space. Sparked real conversations, active participation, stuff words alone just couldn't do.
And then there's data storytelling. Taking those flat, one-dimensional data points and transforming them into actionable narratives, making complex information understandable through visualization. It's about bridging that gap between just having knowledge and actually achieving understanding, maybe even wisdom, uncovering patterns hidden in the numbers.
So, bringing it all back to design thinking, what does this mean? People don't just buy products, do they? They hire them to do a job, fulfill a need. That's jobs to be done. Defines the why behind the what. The core purpose your design serves for the user.
Which connects perfectly to Theodore Levitt's question, are you selling the drill or the quarter-inch hole?
Right. Focus on the outcome.
Exactly. His whole philosophy emphasizes understanding what the customer really desires, not just making the product efficiently. Your story needs to focus on that human experience, the desired outcome,
Yeah.
not just the mechanics.
This also makes me think about happily ever after. Even that isn't really the end, is it? Stories, designs, they live on. They evolve. The source pushes us to think about what happens after the initial goal is met. How does the design unfold over time? Encourages ongoing innovation.
And knowing that potential ending or that desired future state, it gives you a really powerful tool. Work backwards. Start your story or your design process from that outcome, from the transformation you want to create. That approach gives you all the clues you need to craft a great beginning, ensures every step is focused on purpose, on value, avoids getting lost in unnecessary details up front.
Okay, here's something I find really interesting. Vulnerability. It's not a weakness, is it? It's actually presented as a strength here.
Absolutely.
Sharing your challenges, admitting imperfections, like the JetBlue founder talking about his ADHD, it creates these incredibly powerful connections, builds trust.
It really does. It adds that layer of authentic conflict, of humanity, makes stories captivating, deeply relatable.
So there you have it, quite a journey through these universal principles of storytelling, all aimed at transforming how you approach design, communication, and just human connection.
Yeah, ultimately, I think what this deep dive really highlights is that storytelling. It's not just about spinning a good yarn. It's
Right.
about engineering empathy. From the tiniest infra-thin detail right up to the massive scope of world building. Every single choice you make in design is also a narrative choice. It shapes human connection. It drives real-world transformation. It's about making your audience feel the solution, not just, understand it intellectually.
So what stands out to you from today's deep dive? What really resonated? How might you use some of these principles to tell a more compelling story or create a more impactful design next time? Maybe you'll focus on that subtle power of infra then, or perhaps that transformative magic of working backwards from where you want to end up. We invite you to think about it. What aha moment will you aim to create next for your audience?